My name is Liam O'Connell, and I photograph the dead. Not the glamour shots for obituaries, but the raw, unvarnished truth of their final moments. For the New Orleans Police Department, I'm the man who captures the aftermath, the grim canvas of crime scenes. Third-generation Irish-American, they say the stoicism runs in the blood. Maybe it does. I've seen things that would shatter most people. Arterial spray on a pristine wall, limbs twisted into impossible angles, the vacant stare of a life extinguished. My camera, a heavy, familiar weight in my hands, is my shield. It keeps me detached, observing without feeling a cold eye on a colder world. Logic is my anchor, the scientific method my creed, that am why life outside work is as stark as my darkroom, solitary and quiet. My apartment in the Bywater, a small, unassuming space, is perpetually scented with developing chemicals and the faint, melancholic notes of a jazz record, usually something mournful by Thelonious Monk. I avoid crowds, prefer the silence, and find a strange solace in the predictable, grim rhythm of my job. New Orleans, with its vibrant, eerie energy, its ancient secrets whispered on the humid breeze, is just a backdrop for the next fatality. I become immune to its charm, its history, its ghosts. Or so I thought. Every city has its shadows, but New Orleans, it wears them like a second skin. I always consider myself above them, a mere observer. Tonight, the city was particularly stifling, the air thick with humidity and the distant thrum of late-night revelry from the quarter. My phone buzzed, cutting through the silence of my apartment. It was the dispatcher, her voice unusually hushed, even for a murder. "O'Connell," she said, "we've got a situation in the Garden District." Unusual. Unusual. That word, more than any other, piqued my jaded interest. It wasn't gruesome or complex or high profile. It was unusual. It hinted at something outside the grim norm, something that defied the predictable patterns of human violence. No bloodbath, she'd added. No obvious tragedy. Just unusual. That's what they always say when they don't know what they're looking at. But this time it felt different. A tremor of something unfamiliar that I grabbed my gear, the familiar weight of the camera bag, a small comfort. The drive through the gas lamp-lit streets of the Garden District was quiet, the grand old mansions looming like silent sentinels behind their wrought iron fences. The air grew heavier, thicker as I approached the address. An old, stately townhouse, shrouded by ancient oaks and Spanish moss, seemed to absorb the streetlights, casting long, dancing shadows. It felt cold, despite the oppressive heat of the night. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. A premonition, perhaps? I scoffed at the thought. Premonitions were for psychics and poets, not forensic photographers. The uniformed officers at the scene were subdued, their usual boisterous chatter replaced by hushed whispers. Detective Miller, a veteran with tired eyes and a perpetually rumpled suit, met me at the door. "Liam," he nodded, his gaze distant. "You're going to want to see this." It's quiet. Quiet was an understatement. The house was unervingly silent, a profound stillness that felt unnatural, like a held breath. The air inside was stagnant, heavy, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible metallic tang that wasn't blood. Something else. Something metallic and cold, like old iron-dot misses. Eleanor Vance, an elderly socialite known for her charity work and her meticulously curated antique collection, was found in her ornate living room. She sat peacefully in a high-backed velvet armchair, her hands folded delicately in her lap, a faint, almost beatific smile on her lips. No visible wounds, no signs of forced entry, no struggle. Her silver hair was neatly pinned, her silk dress unrumpled. She looked as if she had simply drifted off to sleep, a quiet end to a long life. But there was a profound sense of wrongness. The serenity was too perfect, the stillness too absolute. It defied everything I knew about violent ends. Death, even natural death, usually left some trace of struggle, some final, human gesture. This was clinical, too neat. My mind, trained to spot discrepancies, screamed at the lack of them that I began my routine, the familiar click of the shutter echoing in the unnaturally quiet room, the flash illuminating every detail. I moved methodically, documenting the scene from every angle, my eyes scanning for the telltale signs of a struggle, a forced entry, anything. There was nothing. The cleanliness of the death was deeply unsettling. It defied everything I knew about violent ends. It felt like a stage set, meticulously arranged for an audience of one. Who would stage a death like this? And why? My logical brain churned, searching for a motive, a method, anything tangible. I framed a close-up shot of Mrs. Vance's serene face. Something flickered in my viewfinder. A faint, shimmering outline, like heat haze, around her head. It was translucent, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Then, a fleeting distortion, a ripple in the air that wasn't there when I lowered the camera. I blinked, shook my head. Fatigue, I told myself. Or a trick of the old house's ornate lighting. Perhaps a faulty lens. The long hours were finally getting to me. I adjusted my grip, refocused, and took the shot again. The anomaly was gone. See? Just tired eyes. Despite my rationalization, an inexplicable chill ran down my spine. A sudden, intense feeling of being watched, an unknown weight on my chest. I glanced around the empty room, my hand instinctively tightening on my camera. The other officers were still outside, giving me space. I was alone with the dead, and something else. No, Liam, don't be an idiot. It's just an old house, a strange death. Your imagination is running wild. Get a grip. I brushed it off as the eerie atmosphere of the old house, the kind of place that could play tricks on the mind. Still, the chill lingered, a cold finger tracing its way up my spine, like a phantom touch. Back in my darkroom, the familiar red glow of the safe light and the comforting scent of developing chemicals usually brought a sense of peace, a sanctuary from the grim realities of my day. Tonight, they felt like a trap, the walls pressing in. I loaded the film, the silence punctuated only by the gentle slosh of the developing tanks, each movement a deliberate act against the growing unease. Just routine, just chemicals and light. There's nothing here that isn't explainable as the first negatives emerge from the developer. I held them up to the light, my breath catching in my throat. The faint shimmer I'd seen in the viewfinder was clearly visible now, a translucent aura around Mrs. Vance's head, almost like a halo of static. And then, the distortions. Not just ripples, but faint, elongated figures, like warped reflections in rippling water, clinging to the edges of the frame, almost behind the victim. They were indistinct like smoke, but undeniably there. My heart hammered against my ribs. No, this can't be. This isn't possible. My hands trembled slightly as I moved to the enlarger, making the first prints. The prints confirmed my growing dread, etching it onto glossy paper with horrifying clarity. The ghosts were starkly visible, ethereal, almost smoky outlines, their forms shifting and indistinct, yet undeniably present. But the most horrifying detail was Mrs. Vance's face in the photographs. The serenity I had seen at the scene was gone, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated terror, a silent scream frozen just before death. Her eyes, in the photos, were wide with a horror that was physically absent from her body when I stood over her. Her mouth was open, a silent O of agony, a detail I had not observed in person. How? How could my camera capture something my eyes missed? It's impossible. A trick of light, a double exposure, anything but this. Disbelief warred with a chilling certainty. My jaded facade, built over years of witnessing the worst of humanity, shattered like glass. This wasn't a trick of light, a faulty lens, or fatigue. This was something else entirely. Something impossible. My logical world, my anchor, began to crumble around me. The rational explanations, the scientific principles I lived by, offered no comfort, no answers. The photographs, the very tools of my trade, had betrayed me, showing me a truth I was not equipped to handle. My world was turning inside out. Everything I believed, everything I relied on was a lie. Or worse, incomplete. I spent the rest of the night, and the better part of the next day, poring over the prints, magnifying them, desperate for a rational explanation. My mind raced, trying to find a flaw in the film, the chemicals, the camera itself. But the evidence was staring back at me, undeniable and terrifying. The faint figures coalesced, forming a malevolent, indistinct shape hovering near where the killer would have stood. It wasn't a human form, not truly, but a swirling vortex of shadow and distorted energy, like a dark stain on reality. It was a void, a hungry emptiness that seemed to suck the light out of the image. It wasn't just a shadow, it was an absence. The photos now told a story the physical scene could not, a narrative of unseen horror. They showed Mrs. Vance's final, terrifying moments, her struggle against an unseen force, her desperate, silent plea, her body contorting in agony, all captured in the fleeting, spectral forms that surrounded her. It was as if the camera had captured not just light, but the very essence of terror, the residual energy of a violent act. The last thing she saw, the last thing she felt, and my camera, my cold, impartial camera, had recorded it. And then came the most terrifying realization. This malevolent shape wasn't just a residual image, a ghost of the past. It felt active. It seemed to linger, almost watching me through the photograph, its presence extending from the glossy print into my darkroom. A sudden, icy cold spot formed beside me, a pocket of unnatural frigidity that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I heard a faint, guttural whisper, not in my ears, but in my mind, a low, resonant hum of pure malice. I felt a crushing weight, a suffocating pressure, as if the air itself was being drawn out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. I stumbled back, knocking over a tray of Fixer, the acrid smell momentarily cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. It was here, in my darkroom, with me. This wasn't just a photograph. It was a window into something truly dark, and it followed me through. I tried everything to rationalize it. I re-examined my camera, meticulously cleaning every lens, testing every setting. I checked my chemical batches, my water temperature, every variable I could think of. I was a scientist, damn it. There had to be a scientific explanation. A faulty batch of film? A light leak I'd never noticed? Anything. I even returned to the townhouse, compelled by an inexplicable urge to reshoot the scene, hoping to prove it was a fluke, a one-off anomaly. But the anomalies were more vivid, more aggressive in the new photos. The shimmering outlines were sharper, the distorted figures more defined, almost lunging from a frame. It was mocking me. It was stronger now, bolder. The imprints were no longer confined to the photographs. I started seeing fleeting glimpses of the distorted figures in my peripheral vision. A shadow darting across a hallway, a shimmer in the corner of my eye when I was alone in my apartment. My sanctuary, my quiet corner in the bywater, felt invaded, its solitude replaced by a creeping sense of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains was amplified. My own home was turning against me. Sleep became impossible, plagued by nightmares of Mrs. Vance's terror, her silent scream, and the malevolent presence that had consumed her. I experienced sleep paralysis, waking to the crushing weight on my chest, hearing the guttural whispers that seemed to emanate from the very air, seeing the shadowy shapes loom over me in the darkness of my bedroom. I was jumpy, withdrawn, my meticulous routine replaced by a frantic obsession with this one case, this one impossible truth. My mind was a battlefield. Every moment of peace was shattered by the creeping dread. I was losing myself, piece by agonizing piece that my colleagues noticed. Detective Miller, always observant, pulled me aside in the precinct hallway a few days later. His brow was furrowed with a concern that was rare for him. "Liam," he said, his voice low, "you look like hell. You sleeping at all?" I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Just a tough case, Miller. You know how it is." He grunted, unconvinced. "This Vance thing? It's clean. Too clean. But you've been acting like you saw the devil himself. Anything you want to share?" I hesitated. How could I explain the spectral images, the terror in Mrs. Vance's photographic eyes, the cold spots? No, just the quietness of it. "It gets to you." Miller just nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on me. "Auhigt, Okono. Just take care of yourself. We need you sharp." Later that week, my usual darkroom partner, Maria Rodriguez, a sharp, no-nonsense photographer with a dry wit, found me staring blankly at a wall, a print of Mrs. Vance's living room clutched in my hand. "Liam, you okay?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. "You've been holed up in here for days, and you keep reprinting the Vance scene. What's going on?" I turned, the print still in my hand. There's something in these photos, Maria. Something I can't explain. She took the print from me, her brow furrowing as she examined it. Looks like a standard living room to me. A bit dusty, maybe. What are you seeing? I pointed to the faint, smoky outlines, the subtle distortions. Look closer. Around her, near the desk. It's like a heat haze, but it's not. And her face in the close-ups. It's different from how she looked at the scene. Maria squinted, then held the print up to the light. Liam, I think you're just tired. Or maybe the film stock's a bit old. I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Just noise. She handed it back, a sympathetic but dismissive look on her face. You need a break. Go home, get some sleep. This job can mess with your head. I realized the imprint wasn't just on the photos, it was on me. The killer's malevolent presence, documented and thus acknowledged, had now attached itself to me, a parasitic shadow, feeding on my sanity. Isolating me from the very people who might have helped, I was no longer just documenting. I was hunted. The line between my work and my life had blurred, then vanished entirely. I was driven by a desperate, consuming need to understand why this was happening and who or what this presence belonged to. I delved into obscure texts, old New Orleans folklore, dusty tomes on spiritualism and the occult, anything that might offer an explanation, a weapon against the unseen. I was grasping at straws, I knew it. But what else was there? Logic had failed me. Science had abandoned me. All that was left was the impossible. I scoured the internet, library archives, old newspaper clippings, seeking any mention of similar phenomena, any whisper of a connection. The presence became overtly aggressive, its manifestations no longer subtle. Objects in my darkroom moved on their own. A chemical bottle toppled from the shelf, shattering on the concrete floor, its acrid fumes filling the air. A developed print, still wet, slid across the counter as if pushed by an unseen hand, landing face down. The whispers became guttural growls, echoing in the confined space, a chorus of unseen malice that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. The cold spots were no longer just areas of frigidity. They were icy tendrils that seemed to wrap around my limbs, tightening, suffocating, leaving phantom bruises. It wanted me to break. It wanted me to surrender. But something in me, some stubborn Irish defiance, refused. I wouldn't let it take me point one night, amidst the chaos of my darkroom, surrounded by the swirling shadows and the oppressive weight. I stumbled upon it. I was examining one of the earliest, most distorted photos, a close-up of Mrs. Vance's antique writing desk. In a moment of sheer terror-fueled clarity, I noticed a minute detail, almost invisible to the naked eye, a faint, almost imperceptible symbol etched into the dark wood of the desk. It was barely a scratch, easily dismissed as a flaw in the wood, but in the photo, illuminated by the spectral light of the imprint, it stood out. A flash of understanding, a chilling recognition. My blood ran cold, then hot with a desperate kind of hope. It was so small, so insignificant, yet it held the key. It was a symbol I recognized from one of the obscure folklore books I'd been devouring. An ancient Creole voodoo sigil, associated with malevolent spirits, with binding and possession, with drawing life force from a victim. This was it. This was the killer's signature, his calling card, a clue about his identity or motive, even if he was physically long gone. This wasn't just a random haunting. It was deliberate, a ritualistic act. A ritual, a binding. It wasn't just a ghost. It was something summoned, something controlled, or perhaps something that controlled its summoner. And now it was bound to me, too. The knowledge was a double-edged sword, a terrifying insight that also drew its full attention. The moment of revelation was also the moment of attack. The presence, enraged by my discovery, by my understanding, lashed out with a force that was no longer just a feeling. It was a tangible, suffocating entity. It slammed me against the wall, the air knocked from my lungs. It tried to overwhelm me, to consume me, to leave its permanent mark, just as it had on Mrs. Vance. I felt its icy tendrils wrap around my throat, squeezing, pulling me into the cold, dark void that seemed to emanate from the photographs. I fought back, not with fists, but with a desperate resolve to break free from its grip, to deny it the satisfaction of another victim. I wouldn't be another one of its prints. I wouldn't be another silent scream. The darkroom, Once my sanctuary became a battleground between the seen and the unseen, a struggle for my very soul. I would not yield. I clawed at the air, gasping, my vision blurring, but a primal scream tore from my throat, a defiance against the crushing weight that I survived the encounter, barely. I don't remember how I broke free, only the crushing weight lifting, the guttural screams fading, and the sudden, blessed return of breathable air. The dark room was in disarray, a testament to the unseen struggle. Chemicals spilled, prints scattered, my enlarger overturned. It looked like a poltergeist had torn through it, and in a way it had. The immediate, suffocating presence was gone, but the air still felt thin, charged with a residual malice. A residue, like the chemicals I once used. It was still here, but its grip was broken. For now, I was alive, but irrevocably changed. I could no longer look at the photos without feeling a profound chill, a deep-seated dread that settled in my bones. The imprint was still there, a chilling reminder of what I had witnessed, of the impossible truth I had uncovered. But its power over me had diminished, perhaps because I had confronted it, or perhaps because I now understood its nature, stripped it of some of its mystery. Knowledge, even terrifying knowledge, was a kind of shield. But it came at a cost. That my career as a forensic photographer was over. I couldn't go back to documenting death, not when I knew what else might linger, what unseen horrors might be captured by the lens. I left the force, the sterile world of logic replaced by an unsettling, terrifying awareness of the unseen. My anchor had been severed, and I was adrift in a world far more complex and terrifying than I had ever imagined. The world was not what I thought it was, and I was no longer the man I thought I was. The detachment that had once been my strength was now a gaping wound, exposing me to a reality I could never unsee. The story ends not with triumph, but with a chilling sense of dread, a quiet horror that gnaws at the edges of my sanity. The experience has left a permanent scar on my psyche, a mark deeper than any physical wound. I live with a heightened awareness, a constant vigilance, seeing shadows where there were none before, hearing whispers on the wind. The malevolent presence, the imprint of the killer, is still out there, bound to the city, waiting for its next victim, waiting for another photographer to document its work. I keep one print, hidden away in a locked box, a secret burden, a chilling reminder of the day the dead spoke through my lens, and the darkness spoke through the dead. And I am left to wonder, always, when the next unusual call will come, and if, this time, I'll be able to resist the pull of the lingering imprint, or if it will finally claim me.